just by reading the tea leaves, I think if Giannis goes to Bucks management and is like, "Hey, I want to try something different," in no uncertain terms, I think the Nets are the first team to call the Bucks and be like, "Hey, we need Giannis. We've been looking for Giannis for what is it, 2-3 years now."
Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win!
The only Net fans you know? The only Nets fans you know? Man. I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to Only Net Fans You Know podcast. I'm Peter. Welcome to episode number 103. I'm joined by a special returning guest. You've seen his work on Nets Wire, part of USA Today. Welcome back to the show, Sharif Phillips-Keaton. What's going on, bro?
Pete, it's good to see you, man. It's been a while since the last time, we got to chop it up, but I'm happy to, talk some more ball with you. I know the Nets got disappointed with the lottery, so I'm happy to get into it.
All right, let's just jump straight into it. You mentioned it. Nets fall to 8th. We have, out of all the teams, the Mavericks win the Cooper Flag lottery. Philadelphia jumps us. Total mayhem. I was on a live stream with Nets Kingdom, the home team, and I was just flabbergasted. But I have to think, what is going on with the Nets front office right after they see that they're picking 8th? What's the first move Sean Marks or the front office makes? What's the first call?
In my opinion, I trust what Sean Marks is saying when he was saying, they want to build this organically, obviously, while remaining flexible. I think the first call was probably the rest of the front office, see if maybe are we cool with drafting Kuminga? Are we hoping Kaman Malawatch drops? Are we hoping Jeremiah Fears drops? I also think in the back of Sean Marks' mind that they are trying to trade up. I assume just because if you're trying to get an impact player and you want this rebuild to be done as short as possible, I don't know if you want to hope that next year you get lottery luck and you can get, AJ DeBanza or Darren Peterson. So I think they're looking at guys they could take an 8, but I also think they're looking to trade up as well.
That's interesting. You think they're talking about players already? I would imagine they set up a meeting and you have a big board that's been set up throughout the year with all the information the scouts have brought in. But just to go over the picks that they do have in the draft, they have 4 first rounders, 8, 19, 26, and 27. 1 second rounder, that's going to be pick 36. We had Eric Slater from Clutch Points. Great guy, he's been on the podcast. He's already reported that the Nets have met with Fears, Igor Denham, Antetokounmpo, and Carter Bryant. Have you heard any surprises or anything at all from any of these prospects or anything from the team, just beyond those 4 players?
I have been seeing a lot of talk, and it's surprising to me because I'm not sure I would take him that high. But I've seen various people. I'll shout out, Locked On Nets with Doug and Adam over there. They were talking about Colin Murray Boyles. I saw some people talking about Asa Newell, and I think the one that sticks out to me as somebody I'm just not sure is going to go at 8 is Murray Boyles, just because he seems like the kind of guy that has a low ceiling and probably a high floor, but he doesn't shoot the 3 well. And when a guy's like 6'7", 250, and he doesn't shoot the ball well in today's game, and he's probably going to have to play power forward and be a little undersized. That's one thing where I'm like, if the Nets took him at 8, I'd be very shocked. I think the one thing that was interesting is I haven't seen much talk about Kasparas Yakachonis, who I actually thought was yeah, and I like him too, and I feel like he fits that kind of bigger point guard that pretty much every team is usually attracted to, that not every team has a guy that can match up with that at the point guard spot, so it kind of gives you that little edge. But it seems like he's falling as far as like draft stock is concerned. And I guess lastly, for you can chime in. I still think a lot of Nets fans are sleeping on Kuminga, and I've said this on Twitter. I've said this plenty of times. I am not here for any Antetokounmpo slander. The dude can play.
Oh boy, we're gonna fight. I am not. We're gonna fight, bro. So going over, I went over a couple of the mock drafts, so you guys didn't have to. Just going over the 8th spot. Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo Sports has us taking Derek Queen. The Ringer has Trey Johnson. ESPN Antetokounmpo. CBS has Fears, and Tankathon has Maluwatch. I could see any of those guys being taken. I'm not a big Antetokounmpo fan, but I will say that his shooting helps his floor at the very, very least. You know the guy could shoot. Playing with a Maluwatch and a Cooper Flag, I can see how maybe Antetokounmpo was put into a certain role because, listen, I talk to you. I talk to a lot of draft people. When I say draft people, I'm not talking about teams. I'm just talking about a guy like Wilco from Floor and Ceiling. They love Antetokounmpo. Top 5 lock. People are so high on him. So I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to keep on looking. I'll get back to you. I don't love it. But the pick, let me tell you the pick that I like. I told you I like Jonathon. I think he has a lot of flaws. I don't want him at 8, but the guy who I do want at 8, despite the bad combine, Derek Queen. I feel like he could fit that Sabonis role in the Jordy offense so well. I understand there's lots of issues with working out and the conditioning. Listen, he had a pretty good year. He did that out of shape. Imagine him in shape, getting bigger, getting older, getting stronger with his ability. I feel like you could just slide him in, and that's a real piece you could build around. Well, what do you think about Derek Queen?
Honestly, I'm with you 100% of the way. I thought I was actually surprised because I think towards the end of the season when these mock drafts started to pick up steam, Derek Queen started shooting up in the draft. Because I thought like right around conference tournament, NCAA tournament time, Derek Queen was like a lottery pick, but like 9 through 14 or something. And then after he hit the buzzer beater for him to beat Colorado State, he was like as high as 5. And I'm like, oh man, if the Nets can't get 5, they might not get Derek Queen. I personally like Derek Queen. I think as far as like his offensive skill set, aside from his shooting, I think he can pretty much do everything else you would want a big to be able to do if you're going to run your offense through them. Defense is obviously an issue, which I mean, I talked about this with other guys I cover the Nets with other people that you would probably have to scheme around Derek Queen on defense because he's not going to be that shot blocker kind of dude. Jonathan Wasserman from Bleacher Report compare him to Alperen Şengün. Those are guys that got to get schemed around because they're not going to be the traditional protect the rim kind of bigs. But for what you get from them offensively, if it's at a certain level, you'll deal with it. And I think Derek Queen, like you said, if he probably has to lose some weight. And he's not the most impressive athlete, but if he can, get in an NBA type of regiment and diet, I think he'll be just fine at the next level.
Last question before we move on to the next topic. Is Fears too small?
I'm tempted to say yes, but I'm at the same time, I'm going to say no because body types change for the most part. I think the last time I saw him listed, I forget what it was at the combine. I think it was 6'3", maybe, or like
I think it was 6'2". Was it 6'2"?
6'2".
I got to look it up.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. And well under 200 pounds, which is fine. I think as a point guard, you can survive like that. I think the only issue for someone like Fears, which I think is the issue with guys at the point guard spot in general, is just like running a switching scheme with them is just going to be hard because that's all the team is going to single out. So for someone like Fears, he's probably always going to be small. He may at one point in his career get to 200 pounds, but even if he doesn't, I think if he can be at like a 180, 190, I think he'll be fine. The issue is if he can't counter that offensively, because that's his appeal right now. His ability to handle the ball, shoot the ball. And like when he got on those crazy hot stretches at Oklahoma, I mean, he looked like one of the best players in his draft, which he obviously is because he I think he possibly could go as high as 5.
But I feel like he's so young. Like keep in mind he came into college a year younger, so he's playing against guys who are a year older in that competition of this freshman class. So there's a lot of wiggle room here for some growth. I'm interested to see what happens. That's another guy who I would not be mad because you could see kind of like the building block. You could see the clay, and if you mold it the right way, you have a very nice player. And I feel like you could say that about like 10 to 12 guys in this draft, which is the difference between this draft and other drafts, in my personal opinion. But I got to move on. Next question, or next set of questions, I should say. We get eighth. Twitter goes a flood of all these mock trades, looking at teams' rosters, who could trade where. And it seems to be the biggest noise, at least so far, has been with the Spurs and the Sixers. Mostly with the Sixers. We're talking about Paul George's contract coming back, or I saw another deal which I thought was not really realistic, but at least a little bit better. Drummond, Oubre in 3 for CJ 19 and 27. There's no way in hell you're going to get pick number 3 without giving up pick number 8. Well, what's your take on the Sixers Nets matchup for a possible trade?
I agree with you. The second scenario is more realistic than the first, only because I know Philly would have to send out they would have to receive as much money as they're sending, I think, at a certain point, because they're over the first apron. But the second scenario, where really Drummond and Oubre would pretty much match, like it would be good for salary matching purposes. Basically, you're giving up 3 firsts. Well, not 3 firsts, sorry. 3 firsts. 3 firsts, CJ for number 3 Drummond and Oubre, which I don't think is the worst deal.
I disagree. I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. This is how I look at it. The cap stuff. We'll hold on for a second. You're trading. We'll start off with 8 for 3. So I'm moving up 5 spots. That's how I see it. Okay. This is what the deal would look like. Oubre, Drummond, 3 for 8, 27, and CJ. So basically, I'm using 27 and CJ to move up 5 spots. Which you might say, man, that's horrible. That's horrible. But no, this is within the top 10 in a draft like this that's special. That might be the price. Let's go back a couple years when we traded Trae Young for Doncic. There was a couple first rounders included in that deal, and I think they were just swapping like 1 or 2 spots. When you're in the top 10, the price jumps up. What is CJ really worth? What is CJ really worth? Pick number what? Maybe 18? You're not going to get a top 10 pick for CJ. I'm going to switch up the scenario for Nets fans over here. You have pick number 3. Would you take pick number 3 and trade it for CJ? No, he's not worth a top 10 pick.
Right.
So I think that's how you have to look at it. 27 and CJ to move up 5 spots.
And then, right, but to that point, I mean, I think that's fine. I was interpreting a deal as you're giving up 19, 27, 8, and CJ.
Oh, no.
3. That's what I was.
My bad.
So yeah, that's what I was interpreting. But 3, or I'm sorry, 8, or what? I'm sorry, what'd you say? CJ and 19, or CJ and 8 for 3.
The Athletic trade had CJ 19 and 27. Pete's deal has CJ 8 and 27.
I see.
So I'm just swapping 8 and 19, basically.
Okay. Right. Okay. I wouldn't have a problem with that deal, especially when you consider, I mean, obviously Sean Marks hasn't said it either privately or otherwise, what deals were coming in for CJ over the course of this past season. And we know CJ wasn't untouchable. My bet is you're probably not getting more than a first round pick for him. I assume that's why he wasn't traded. So I guess to couple that with what you were just saying, like, and you are trading up from the bottom 10 to the top 10. Actually, I guess that's not really a bad deal. I wouldn't be, and you would still at least have another first round pick to use other than 3. So honestly, if the Sixers would be willing to do that, I'd take that if I were, Marks and company.
With Philly, like you mentioned, they have the apron issue. So if they're going to make a deal, they have to love this deal because they really have little to no wiggle room left. So you may
Right.
not want to give up 27 in a deal, but listen, you have to make them happy. You have to make them happy. Anything else on the Sixers deals?
And I just want to say I also agree with you, especially when you think if in the grand scheme of things, if the Nets are intent on moving up, you pretty much should do whatever it takes to get from 8 to 3, because 3 would allow you to take Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. I'm just throwing names out there. I assume those would be the guys in consideration versus like Derek Queen, Kasparas, Jonathon. And I mean, we like those guys, but those guys obviously have more flaws than someone like Bailey, someone like Edgecombe. And if that means you have 8, and like you said, like you still got 19 and 26, even if they wanted 26, you have 3 and 27. I mean, you can't let a late first round pick stop you from getting Ace Bailey. So I actually agree with you on that.
If the Nets love a player, please be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Please be aggressive. I'm not going to get upset of losing 26 and 27 if you wind up drafting a Derek Queen at 3 and he becomes the next DeMarcus Cousins and become like the face of the franchise. I won't be mad at that. You know what I mean? So like, let's say,
Exactly.
okay, you're not aggressive. You stay at 8. You get a player who's maybe an all-star, but isn't, a difference maker as far as, winning a championship. And you end up getting 2 good role players at 26 and 27. I'd rather take the swing if you believe in someone. And I'm gonna go looking at this.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look at the Spurs deal right now, and they have a ton of guards. They have Castle, De'Aaron Fox, and of course Harper is supposed to go second. There's talk: do you sell off Harper? Do you see who could be the highest bidder? Do you take Harper, try to work it out? Do you trade Castle? Like, what exactly do you do if you're the Spurs? I don't see a deal with the Nets happening. It would be around Harrison Barnes supposedly. What do you think about that? I don't think that's a realistic thing, to be honest.
From what I've been reading, it seems like the Spurs are more intent to get Harper, but I've seen crazier things than a team getting, let's just say, the second best player in the draft. And there might be teams that got screwed by the lottery, Charlotte, Utah, that are like, hey, we could really use a Dylan Harper, and maybe just putting forth a bidding war and see what happens. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't really see where there's a trade that works out for both sides between the Spurs and the Nets, especially because if I were the Spurs, I would see what I could get for number 2, because I feel like adding Harper to that doesn't really make much sense. I kind of compare it to like what Portland did when they added Scoot, because you had Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, and Scoot Henderson. You kind of have like 3 guys fighting for playing time. And on a rebuild, you're not really too worried about that because they're going to get playing time. But at some point, you're going to have to make a decision. And I feel like that just makes things more complicated. The Harrison Barnes salary dump, I mean, the Nets, it's pretty much known that the Nets are looking for deals like that. That was the motivation for trading for D'Angelo Russell, is that it came with additional picks. So if the Spurs are willing to give you, I don't know, they give you a first round pick to take Harrison Barnes, but if they were willing to give you 2 seconds or whatever it is, and you move on from there, I can see that happening, but that to me would feel like on the lower side of trades that benefit the Nets. So honestly, I wouldn't blame Marks for just like leaving that where it is.
I think that's fair. I think it's more realistic we move up from 19, if I'm being purely honest here. A couple teams I've been looking at: Atlanta has 13, San Antonio has 14, OKC has 15. They all have multiple picks. I think it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if we saw the Nets be aggressive to move up from 19. Well, what do you think a deal might look like? Obviously, we're not talking players here, so we're going to leave off the salary, but let's talk picks. To get from 19 to, I'm going to just make this up, to 14 with San Antonio, for example. Well, what are the Nets looking at over here? Do we have to give up 26 and 27? Is this a second rounder? Well, what would you think? Just purely your opinion.
Hmm.
Or would CJ and 19 do it?
I think if you were looking for I want to pick my words careful, like a lower scale move, I think you could probably give 19 and CJ, probably get you to 14. But with that being said, I think if you're going to use CJ to move up, I think using it for a higher leverage move, like what we talked about earlier with the Sixers, would probably be better. But I think 19 and CJ would definitely get you to 14. I don't think the Spurs would turn something like that down.
I don't know if I should give Sean Marks credit here or if this is just luck. If you come into this offseason and this draft season trading CJ at the trade deadline, really the only guy of like cap value that you have is Nick Claxton. And his value isn't as high as CJ is right now. So I think to myself, was that a Sean Marks, move of looking into the future, saying, you know what, it's good to have this contract and this player who's might be wanted on draft night, just in case you have a deal that comes your way. I wonder if it's that or if it's just pure luck that I didn't find the 2 first rounders that I wanted, so I'm just going to wait. And now all of a sudden we're in this situation. Well, what do you think?
I think both is true. I would like to think that if Sean Marks got the deal he was looking for CJ, I know he said what he said about CJ being a pro's pro and being a leader. I think all of that stuff's true. But I also think it's true if someone was like, hey, here's 2 first, he'll say, CJ, it was great to see you. Great to know you. We'll wish you luck. So you can call it like luck to a certain degree, because I think also there probably is in the back of his mind, hey, we could use CJ down the line, and especially with the way the CBA is, salary is more important than ever. And part of the issue with some teams that weren't able to get trades on is that you didn't have guys in certain ranges. Like, you basically need a CJ contract to either get a CJ level player just to, put terms together, or so you don't have to use so many players to get to a salary of a higher player, say like Giannis, if he decides to leave Milwaukee. Like, if you don't have Nick Claxton and CJ on the team, you got to put like 10 guys together because everybody else is like rookies or minimum salaries. Like, you need some guys, even if you believe their contract is bloated, they could be used in a trade. And if someone like CJ, who has a career year and their contract becomes a value, then that's like, at least you have that option versus you don't have it if you decide to trade them, and then you got to figure it out in a more creative way. So I think it's a bit of both, but I wouldn't blame someone if they were like, yeah, this is kind of like, Sean Marks got lucky this way. Wouldn't blame me for saying that. But on the other hand, there is a strategy to keeping guys on a roster that fit certain salary slots, especially if you want to eventually trade.
And looking at another part of the Nets assets in this draft, there's 9 teams that do not have a first rounder. A lot of these playoff teams, like I know the Knicks and the Lakers and a couple teams, they have picks like in the 50s. Like, we're talking bottom rung of the second round. And with the Nets having so many picks, if you sell off a pick number 19, a pick number 26, I wonder what the value of adding in a rookie player on a 4-year contract, low money, would do for a team in the apron. I think that would help them out a lot. What value do you think something like that could do if the Nets traded out of the first round and say, you know what, we're going to give up pick number 26, but we're going to get, I don't know, like 2 first rounders in the future or something like that?
I think that's very valuable. And honestly, I think you make a great point there. And it's a point I don't think enough people consider, because I think a lot of people's minds when it comes to basketball, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but is stuck in the era where really, obviously there was always a salary cap, but there was always a way to get around being up against the cap. Whereas now it's pretty clear we saw it with Denver, and it could have possibly been the reason they didn't get further, because they didn't have the money to pay KCP. He went to the Orlando Magic, or you even look at Phoenix, who did what they had to do, re-signing Royce O'Neal to the money they gave him because they really didn't have another option. I think having the draft capital to then say to, like you said, to a Lakers team that needs something to change, or the Nuggets who have to find a way to add more youth eventually, you could be like, hey, this is a cost-controlled slot, and you might actually get a really good player at this slot, and you really don't have much of a choice unless you're going to sell off who you already have. And if you're the Nuggets or the Lakers and time is money, so to speak, yeah, I think the Nets put themselves in a position where they can say, hey, we don't mind taking this pick. We're rebuilding, but it's clear you might need this pick. Give us something for it. I think that's a strong position to be in.
I was told the Bucks made contact with Giannis Antetokounmpo early as this morning, and sources relate to me that a meeting is expected to be scheduled for mid next week. This is where Giannis is going to have the chance to speak with Bucks brass and talk about the direction of the team.
There's going to be a big meeting this week in Milwaukee. Giannis is going to be meeting with the Bucks brass to talk about his future with the team. And I'd imagine soon we find out what exactly is going on with his future. Is he going to be traded or not traded? We've heard that Sean Marks loves Giannis. I've seen mixed reports that the Nets are not interested. They're interested. What is going on? What is real here? Are the Nets going to trade for Giannis?
Just by reading the tea leaves, I think if Giannis goes to Bucks management and is like, hey, it's been good. You know, we won a championship together. I want to try something different. In no uncertain terms, I think the Nets are the first team to call the Bucks and be like, hey, we need Giannis. We've been looking for Giannis for, 2-3 years now, based on reports, I think primarily from Brian Lewis of the New York Post. Wanted to give him a shout out. I think the Nets are one of the first teams to call the Bucks. It just, based on everything we've heard, you might disagree with me, but you can let me know. It seems like the Nets are basically waiting for Giannis at this point. I mean, they'll obviously move forward with what they're planning to do, which is rebuild through the draft. But I think if reports come out, Giannis, Bucks looking for a split, I think Sean Marks, I think he's I can't think of the Bucks GM at the moment, but he's calling the Bucks for Giannis, and probably whatever you want, name the price, in my opinion.
I think this is a real thing. It doesn't, my mind says it doesn't make sense though. I look at the age. He's going to be 31 next year. Yes, he's coming off a great season, 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 60%. He's going to be making $54 million next year, 58 after that, and then he has a player option in 27, 28 for $62 million. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, because I look at that. The numbers say this does not make any sense. There's nobody on the roster. You're going to have to I would imagine CJ has to be part of the deal, maybe even Claxton. So you have Cam Thomas and a bunch of rookies, or younger guys who are going into their second contracts, like Isaiah Williams, maybe a vet like Trendon Watford. This isn't 7-Eleven. They had Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. They had, a roster already set. So this makes no sense to me, but yet I can't get this out of my mind that this interest is real. I've been hearing this for way too long from way too many people saying, yes, this is real. This is a real thing. Sean Marks really likes the guy. But every year that passes, this feels like a deal that should have been done a couple years ago. Am I wrong to think that? What's up with the timeline and the roster? It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you. I think if you were going to go after Giannis, it was better to do it when you had the players that you could pair him with versus now. Now, be that as it may, even though I think the Nets are just waiting for him to want out of Milwaukee, I agree with, I think, most people I've seen talk about it. I wouldn't do it because I just think you're not in the position where, even if, let's say, they do the deal, give it a, CJ, Claxton, however many picks. I saw somewhere they'd probably have to give up like 5 or 6, which I mean, it's for Giannis, so I guess I wouldn't be surprised. So then you pair, like you said, your second best player is maybe Cam Thomas, and then you got to fill out the roster. What makes this different from, or could you even make this team as good as the Milwaukee team he just left? And, it just doesn't seem like it's the right time. So part of me would hope the Nets wouldn't plunge like that, just because I feel like it's a move that then the onus is, okay, you don't even have the players to put around him. So now you have to hit in free agency, and it has to basically happen this year when you have the salary cap space. Otherwise, you don't know if you'll be able to sign people later. And if you give up all your draft picks and it doesn't work out, you're just the rebuild after that is going to be worse than it is now, even though the rebuild now is actually pretty good when you look at assets and stuff. But yeah, I just don't, it wouldn't make sense to go after Giannis, not with the way this team is right now.
What is the percentage he's a Brooklyn Net on opening night?
10%.
I said about 20%, 15 to 20%. And I think I went up a little bit when they got to 8, because I could see, and I don't know why this is horrible to say. Might be ridiculed for this. I feel like I could see 8 being included as part of the package because they don't have a lot of players. So I could see 8, CJ, pick here, pick there. You know what I mean? Cap filler. I could see it would be. I think it'd have to be a crazy deal, right? But some other deals that's talked about, I'll kind of group them together. Claxton to the Lakers. What do you think about that? I think Austin Rivers would have to be the player coming back. Is there anything real to that? Would Sean Marks even do something like that? I don't think the Lakers even have the assets that would make you consider trading Clax as far as right now. You have so much cap space.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see it. I think there was a report from Dan Wiki. I apologize if I said his last name wrong, of the LA Times, saying that the Lakers would be willing to trade Austin Reeves only if they were getting, I forget the exact terminology, but like a bona fide big man, like basically a really good big man. And I think I remember writing about this. That would depend on if they think Claxton is that guy, which I think for them would actually be really good because, Lucas always been, a pick and roll big man, can go up and get the alley-oops. And I mean, we've been watching Claxton do that for 4 or 5 years at this point. I guess it would just depend on how much the Lakers are willing to give up for someone like Claxton. But yeah, I just don't see, and the Lakers don't really have much they'd give. Like they don't have draft picks, and they don't really have guys they can give the Nets that would provide salary cap relief or anything of that mold. So it just seems like a non-starter because where are the assets coming from for the Lakers?
Yeah, that's another thing. It'd probably have to be like a 3-team deal, like Austin Reeves going somewhere and the Nets getting the assets from the third team, maybe something like that. Another thing that I saw that, I don't know, it kind of got me a little heated, I guess you could say. People are looking at Jonathon Kuminga going to the Nets. He's a restricted free agent. And everyone keeps on saying this. Sean Marks, when he took over the Nets, those big offers, those big restricted free agent offers to Alan Crabb, to Tyler Johnson, he's going to do it again. And I make a big argument that, yes, he did do that in the past, but that was when he took over the team and we didn't have picks because of the Boston trade. So you're trying to add talent through restricted free agency because you don't have the high draft picks. Because you don't have the picks, how do you add talent? By trying to poach. I don't think the Nets are in that situation now, especially with a draft with 4 first-rounders. Yes, Kuminga's 22. He played 47 games, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 45% from the field, 30% from 3. He's 6'8". He's still very young at 22 years old. I see the talent there, and I get it. I could see it. Golden State wasn't the best fit for him. And another offense, he might work out very well. But I don't think this is where you spend your big shot with your salary cap with. What do you think?
I agree with you in a general sense. I think it's pretty telling when reportedly the Warriors didn't want to pay Kuminga, I think it was like at least $30 million on his rookie extension. So I think that's telling. I will say this, and this will probably anger a lot of people for me saying this. I'm generally higher on Kuminga than most people, not in the sense of I think he's going to be some elite player. I just think he's a good young player, and he's still young enough where I think you can say, hey, you're in a rebuild anyway. See what he looks like in a bigger role. I do agree with the whole salary thing. Like, it depends how much it costs to get him. If you got to pay 30, or if the offer sheet is like 30 million for the Warriors, yeah, I wouldn't take him. But if the Warriors were willing to let him go for say 20, or if it's the kind of contract, like let's say if it's 25, but it's a descending contract, why not? What else you got to lose?
What give me a percentage chance that the Nets are going to sign Jonathon Kuminga away from the Golden State Warriors, that he's on the opening day roster come next season? What percentage chance?
I'd say 20%.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yep. Let's go.
Two of my favorite players that were on the roster this year, Watford and Zaire Williams. Are they on the Brooklyn Nets roster come next season opening day?
I'd say yes to both.
I agree. I hope they are. Over or under Nets draft night trades? Over or under 2.5?
Over.
I think with all the assets, it's very likely they at least trade back at least once, and maybe even trade up once. I think CJ may be traded. Who knows? I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Rookies, over under 2.5 rookies on the Brooklyn Nets roster come opening night.
Over.
Wow. Over 3. So you think at least 3 rookies? That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's at least 3.
I think that's possible. I don't see 4 happen. I would be shocked with 4 rookies. 3 would be my limit.
Yeah, I think 4 would be a lot to try to develop at the same time. But like, probably your second rounder will be on the team. And I mean, they've already taken 2 guys in the first round before. So, I mean, I can see 3. 4 would be a lot. I agree with you there.
Who are the Brooklyn Nets going to draft on draft night?
That is interesting. I'm gonna say Kuminga, man. I see the vision. I think he fits pretty much in any scenario. And I know a lot of Nets fans are probably gonna be angry when it happens. I just think his floor is high enough. I just think the Nets want to make sure they hit on something. So I'm gonna say Kuminga.
As bad as this sounds, I agree with you. I think he is the odds-on favorite to be there. It seems like a Sean Marks pick. They want the shooting. I could see it happening. And because I don't want it to happen, it means that it probably will happen because I'm so sold on Derek Queen. So I've held you a long time here. Let's get some plugs in there for you, Sharif. Well, where can they find you?
Thanks again, Pete. I appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Sharif Keaton. You see it there on the screen. All of my work is at NetsWire, part of the USA Today Sports platform. You know, I appreciate everyone who reads my content, and I appreciate all the feedback on Twitter. But yeah, those are the 2 main places you can find me and my work.
All right, guys. If you could follow me on Twitter at NetFriendsYouKnow. Subscribe if you enjoyed the episode for future episodes. I got a lot of big guests lined up for this draft season and the off season. Have a great day. Have a great night. And let's go Nets. route